welcome to another video where we're going to be focusing on FMOD. It seems to be a little bit of a series of videos happening here on the YouTube channel. So if you didn't check out my previous video where we went through and delved into the dock, the overview, things like 2D and 3D events, how to change your loop regions so that things loop exactly the same, and creating certain parameters, then do go and check that video out. And also any of you who've come here looking for ambient sound design or location stroke environments, go and check that video out as well, because we did a cityscape recorded and designed in my hometown, and I think it might be useful for you in terms of how that was put together. But today I want to focus on interactive music and a couple of parameters here which are going to jump us between 4 different game states. I suppose the rationale behind this game that I'm designing for is a bit of a Neverwinter Nights style RPG. So in the field of fantasy, where you're going to have places such as taverns, battle scenes, magic, all that sorts of stuff. So it does tend to follow a little bit more of an orchestral approach in terms of the instrumentation. And I've tried to treat that accordingly with these tracks here. So they're all very much orchestral instruments. And I would be aware of that, because obviously we've got 4 scenarios here, but you might end up with 20. So if you end up with loads of different environments you're jumping through, things can get messy quite quick and you kind of forget where you are. So do try and keep all your different cues named appropriately. So do take into account your BPM, your time signature. And remember, you can always right click and add tempo markers to when such tempos changes take place. Remember that you're an audio person, stroke music person. You're going to be potentially handing this session over to someone who is not familiar with, say, music. But they will understand perhaps that this is in one particular time signature, that's in another, and what BPM is. But they haven't actually composed the piece. Plus, it's just a good marker for you. Obviously, you don't have access to your DAW here. So you get a sense of what your stem is and how it's, how it relates to your FMOD build, especially if you've had a week out or even a month out. You can forget exactly what theme it was you were writing and what it was you were trying to achieve. So with that in mind, let's try and now just make these tracks smaller, which we can do by going view. You can go to set track height, and let's just go for the smallest so we can see everything on one screen right in front of us, and we can jump through these different sections. So this takes on, I'm going to play this as I'm talking, this takes on the same sort of approach as we did in the previous video. We've got an intro section which I've called menu, but the menu loop region obviously is between these 2 points. So I've made this particular piece of music loop perfectly, which I had to do with a lot of surgical work with my loop region here, and I did have to click and hold option to drag it outside of a predefined beat which is set within this bar, so we go into more of a time-based function. So once the user's on the menu, this is going to loop. It's a perfect loop that will just continue forever. Ignore this heartbeat for a minute, I'll come back to that. That's linked to this health parameter, which contains automation on the EQ of the bed, and this heartbeat comes in, so that's something for later in the video. Bear in mind that obviously if you're working to a game, probably just creating this kind of 25 second loop for the menu music may not be enough. You might need it to be a minute or 2, but there's not much going on with this. It's just an evolving patch from Alchemy and Logic, and it's working for the demonstration of this video. If we suddenly jump to gameplay, we're now playing the gameplay music, which will again loop. The reason it took so long to jump to that section is because if we double click on this gameplay menu here, we've got this transitional period, which I'm actually going to close off for now because I want to talk about that at the back end of this video. So if we do that again now, let's just zero that. Go back to menu. Now we jump to gameplay. It's now instant in the way that it jumps to the gameplay. So just ignore that part for now, guys. We'll talk about that at the end of the video. let's say the player jumps to a tavern. Let's say they now pick up a quest and they've got to go into battle. They've killed the enemy and they want to go back to the tavern. Okay, they want to save their game because they've had enough. They're going to go back to the menu. Again, it's doing this because we've got a region going back to the menu. See that circle there? That means there's a transition. So if we double click on that, let's solo that out as well and get rid of it for now, because again, we're going to talk about that at the end. So our player's gone back to the menu. Perhaps they want to go back into the gameplay now, so they hit play. Maybe this is asking the player, where do you want to go? Do you want to return to your battle? Or do you want to go back to the tavern to pick up another quest? I want to go to the tavern, please. Okay, so welcome to the tavern. Maybe you're walking around this area talking to different NPCs or non-player characters, trying to pick up a quest. Okay, I've got a quest. I'm off to battle. This could be a cutscene that is gearing you up for the battle. So you get the understanding. You're trying to, when you're working in FMOD, if you probably got a game that's been given to you, so you understand what you're working to. But if you are just working, say, to concept art at this period of time, or to a piece of gameplay, like video, you might not have exactly a 100% clear idea of how this is going to program into the game. So you're giving the developers options based on what you've designed here. So let's get into how we might go about designing this. So it's all basically loop regions and destination tracks set to a parameter. So to create parameters, we're going to go create and then add parameter. Most of the types of parameters that we're using in these videos so far have been continuous, which is what we would use to design our ambient sound design piece, which was in the previous video. And it's what we've used to design this health parameter, which, remember, I'm going to talk to you about again towards the end of this video. In terms of the state parameter, this is what's called a labeled parameter, because it jumps between what you've given a label. It's quite a hard cut. So all I've done is gone create, add parameter. I've chosen a labeled parameter. I've given it a name. I've personally called this state, sorry. And then we've got different labels to go to different places. So it could be workshop. That might be a place in your game. Or it might be battlefield 1. Whatever that's relevant to your particular game that you're working. Then I've hit OK. And in turn, that becomes a parameter in this side of FMOD. Remember, you can always click in this state. And you can go back into your parameters here. So you can then right click. You can edit the parameter. You could add new zones. So say we choose Battleground 1 and we hit OK. You've now got Battleground 1 living within your state. So once you've designed all your actual loop regions, which again happen by, if we come over here, we right click, add loop region. Let's just double click to call this test. Let's drag it up because I like to try and keep all my different logic tracks the same, because it's just a bit easier to see where you're going. So you'd have a piece of audio potentially in here, so we could go window, open our audio bin. What have we got here? Remember our didgeridoo sound, so let's play that. Okay, so let's just drag that in. Let's just put it into this music loops part. So you're very much with your loop here, just creating what you want to be in terms of a loop. So if we set that to be there and we're within test, obviously it's messy, but you can see what's happening with that didgeridoo part. So let's say that this test, we're going to give this a looping transition, but we're going to actually say that we want you to be looping, but we want you to also have a state of battleground 1. And then let's rename this to be battleground 1. So if we come back and we zoom out, we've now got a new loop region here, which we've called battleground 1. You've got battle, tavern, gameplay, and menu. So these are all loop regions, right? So what are these green things? So these green things are what we call transition regions. So we add a transition region and we say where it is we want to send that transition region to. So let's say we call this menu. Let's drag it within the loop region. We click on the menu and we say that we want the condition to be a game state and we want to go back to the menu. So if we now set this to be battleground 1 and we play this, it's going to continually loop within that because we're set to battleground 1 and we're within a loop region. But because we've got this transition state here, which is waiting for the game state to be menu, at which case it will go to menu. As soon as we change this to menu, we've now gone back to the menu game state, in which case this will just continually loop. And you'll notice these arrows point in different directions. So we can do the same thing. If we come back over here, we right click and we say let's add another destination, transition region, this time to battle. Again, let's make it the same length. So we're saying the destination is battle, but we're waiting for the game state to be changed to battle. If I come over here, the only destination or transition region we've got set for gameplay, for menu, is gameplay. So if I change this to be tavern, nothing's going to happen. I have to go for this particular one, gameplay, at which point the gameplay music will start to play. Be aware that part of the reason that continued playing is we unlocked the state. So you might want to drag this region so it's right up to this particular point, in which case when we now play, if we're set to menu, now it will go to gameplay. But because we've got a loop region here, and I, in a sense, have thrown away this piece of music, nothing's ever going to actually swap here. Nothing in this particular design is allowed to go past that region point. So for the purposes of demonstration, let's just leave it all locked within region points. So if we did right click here and we added another transition region and we said you can go to the battleground if you want from the menu, drag it out to your entire possible point of playing and tell it that on the condition of the game state changing to battleground, you will move from the menu. So this is looping forever. Second we change this to battleground, we've gone over to battleground. So you have to keep designing these, you have to keep thinking about where would you want these different transition periods to go. When I thought about the original menu button, I just thought it would go back to gameplay, because obviously I hadn't conceived allowing it to go to a battleground. So I didn't add the transition region because what's the point? But given we've now got this new battleground piece, let's say new transition region 2, why not? We want to send you to the tavern as well. So we got another one, it's got the lines to indicate where it's going to go. And I'm saying you can go to the tavern. So from the battleground, we can now go to the menu, to the battle, and to the tavern. So let's send them to the battle. So now we're going into a cutscene state in my mind, before the battle starts to kick in, I guess kind of now. No, I want to go back to menu. Back to battle. It's not going to happen, because there's no battle set. Okay, so go to battleground 1. Back to gameplay. It's just crashed on me because, again, we haven't got anything set within this parameter to go to that place. There's no gameplay set. So things will go wrong while you design this, and as it gets complicated, you can start making errors. You know, I'm doing this on purpose so that things keep going wrong. So let's add another one. Let's add another transition region. And this time I'm going to allow it to go to gameplay. Zoom in a bit here. So again, we've got another region, gameplay, and the condition of the state parameter, and we want you to go to gameplay. So now if I'm in the battleground state and I go to gameplay, off we go to gameplay. So it's something you just need to explore, and this will start making more and more sense as you continue to do this. Now, earlier in the video we discussed double clicking on these points and how you can create a transition period between different scenes. So some of this loops quite well and it's quite functional, but some of it doesn't. And I think if it's jarring in a sense with the gameplay, that you need, say, a sound to interconnect the two transition periods from moving, then you can design that yourself. You could even actually have a transition composition between two parts. So let's just say if we're on the tavern and we double click on gameplay, this is actually showing me the gameplay event that is going to be looping to at the point you change the state. So we'll put this on tavern so that we're in this area. We've double clicked on gameplay. The circle's opened up to show that we're activating the transition region, and then we've got gameplay following it. So another example would be, say if I click to battle, well, now we've got the battle part showing. Or menu, now we've got menu showing. So it always shows you what it's transitioning to, so you can work out what that's going to sound like. You can click here to make this as long as you want or as short as you want. So let's just use the gameplay one from the tavern, and we're going to use an example based on an assets we've already got. So let's just say, for instance, that you wanted to, what should we do? Let's have a low brass section here, which sounds like this. Maybe we'll get it to just go boom, boom, on its way. Right, so we've designed this now. If we zoom in a little bit, we need to clean this up. So what do we want this to actually do on its transition state to gameplay? Let's say we choose gameplay. That's not really what you want it to do, right? Like 9 seconds before it moves. So you might want to design this a little better. You might want to really go into this. Drag it right back. What does that sound like? So maybe it just does that as it transitions between the two places, and then we'll drag this back. So now if you're in the tavern, you're quite happy in the tavern, you're going to go to gameplay. Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you want to choose something like the rumps, which sound like this. Again, let's drag this back so that we're just on that sound. Let's turn autoplay off, thank you very much. Let's drag that in, let's drag that back. So now we've literally probably got around 1.5 seconds. So set the state to tavern. I want to go to gameplay. Let's go back to the tavern. Again, it's taking forever because we've got the circle currently on, but there's nothing been designed. Let's go back to gameplay. So now if we go to, say, the gameplay, which is here. So we double click on tavern, let's get rid of that. Now the circle's gone. What about if you want something to go back to menu? You know, it could be something like this. Oh, let's zoom in here. Let's turn that autoplay off. See, with this, there's only audio at the very back end of the file. Just turn async. Async will kind of snap your sound within, takes it out of time based. So this will loop on forever, but that will play its own thing. So let's chop that. We're just putting it into async so we can actually edit it. Turn async off. Where are you? There it is. It's probably the worst file for me to grab for you guys, but it's fine. Let's put a little fade on the end there. Cut that back. Let's put another fade on the top. Zoom back out, drag that there, drag that there. So now when you go to the menu, so we're currently in gameplay, let's go to menu. That actually works quite well. It's very, very subtle, but it does actually work. Let's go back to gameplay. Off we go to the menu. Kind of works. So something to play around with if you need those transition periods or those transition regions to happen. And just remember that it's that circle that indicates that you've designed something in the center there to jump to and from. If you've forgotten, I'm jumping back and forth with the bracket, the open bracket and the closed bracket keys, just basically to the left hand side, the return key. That's how I'm zooming in and zooming out all the time on here. But you can also use your keypad, but it depends whether you're on a MacBook or if you're on a mouse that's got some sort of trackpad wheel. So I tend to use the keyboard commands most of the time. So that's how we're jumping between these different areas. Now let's talk a little bit about this health parameter. Now I've designed this in a bit of a strange place because you wouldn't really have it on a menu. It would be something that I suppose would be within the gameplay or the battle or the battleground in this example. But for demonstration purposes, we've done it on the gameplay. Oh, sorry, on the menu. I keep reading that instead of that. So we're set to the state of menu. We got this heartbeat in here, but you see that it's dialed down really low. We can't hear any of the audio. But if I start dialing this health bar down, a few things start to happen. Firstly, we're losing the EQ on the high end, so we've got a sweep happening on this track, which you can actually see in play here. If I move this health down now, so we're 100% health. There's no EQ sweep happening at all, but as we start to run out of health, we're gradually cutting off the high end there to the point where we just end up in bass. This is not set in terms of its loop, so we need to turn that on. That's why we're not able to hear our heartbeat. It should be looping constantly within this section. So now we can hear the heartbeat because we've got no health, but as we start to regain health, heartbeat is gone. As we lose health, your player's about to run out of health there. As we bring it up, we get full sound in terms of our loop, and we lose the heart. So how do we do this? Well, everything within FMOD can be automated. So first off, in terms of how we created the health parameter, well, that was a case of going create, add parameter, a continuous parameter. And let's just call this something like vitality. We're going to go from a range between 0 and 100. And our initial value is going to be 100. So we're basically telling FMOD that your initial value within this new parameter is 100 because we've got 100% health. And we're going to go down to 0, and that's when the players totally run out of health. So we hit OK. We've now got vitality up here, and we've got health. So we're doing pretty much exactly the same thing. You'll also notice that all these different parameters have different sheets at the top here. So now we've got vitality. It's a copy of the audio tracks we've got within our timeline, but we can start automating these accordingly. So let's say I've got my... Let's do a different example. Let's choose our tavern. Mind you, you wouldn't... Let's do battle. So let's put my game state to battle. Let's just hit play. Take me to the battle and loop forever in the battle. So maybe we'll do the same thing. Maybe let's just pretend that this main bed was the only thing that existed at this particular period of time. We didn't have these other elements. But I can right click here. The moment I've got volume and frequency turned on because it's the same channel. Let's choose a different example because I want something that's completely fresh for you guys. So let's do it based on... Alright, let's do it in the tavern. So we go to tavern. Let's do it on this track here. So we've got a multi-instrument here, which is a dulcimer and a harp. So you'll notice here that right now we're playing the dulcimer, which is going to perform 50% of the time. The other 50% of the time you'll hear the harp. So the idea behind this multi-instrument, which we touched a little bit on in the previous video, but this multi-instrument gives us an option of spontaneity during this part. So if we listen now we're playing the dulcimer as opposed to the harp. So it keeps changing different sections each time this loops round. This is a dulcimer again. Dulcimer again. Dulcimer again. Dulcimer again. It's just defaulting back to the dulcimer each time. But you can see that's highlighted at the top there. There's a 50% chance apparently that you'll hear the dulcimer. Let's see what it does when it loops back round for like the third time. Harp. So that's another cool design you can do, and you can just do that by simply dragging two or more different sections. So if we choose these different brass sections and we throw that onto any audio track, it will place them within a multi-instrument. And then you can right click and you can set your play percentage between however many actions that you have. Anyway, we got distracted from our vitality parameter. So let's just set it to this dulcimer and harp track. So if we click on here, we can right click, go to add effects, which we covered in the previous video. And let's choose a multiband EQ. So we've already cut off a whole bunch of the top end with this A parameter. Let's set that. So we're just cutting a tiny bit of top end off here. You can of course choose to turn that off. Maybe you can just literally use at the top here either a higher shelf, so you could shelf it out, or you could choose to actually low pass it, which is probably more what we're after. A didn't make sense to me. I tend to keep A's over here. Let's keep E's this end. But what we can do here is we can right click on this filter here. We can add automation. So now we've got a multi-band EQ added to our automation layer. So it's the same as pressing A in Logic, right? You've got this automation frequency on this side here, but I actually want to do it within the vitality parameter. So remember, we can move this between 0. So when we're to the far left hand side, the player's completely run out of health. Or if we're at 100, the player's got full health. You can click in here, left click, as many times as you like. And it just draws different points of automation. So if we drag this right the way down, you can see in this automation curve how this is actually going to be designed. So you can choose to design it here within your automation and modulation, or within the actual event editor. So this is currently what's going to happen as the health or the vitality comes down. So at the moment we're 100%, but as we drag this down, it starts going down the EQ curve, and we're cutting all the high ends out. So if we put this into action, if we go back to our timeline, we're still in the tavern. We're quite happy, but our vitality is going to start going down. Let's just solo that. Now I see a harp and a dulcimer, especially in the ranges I've composed them. We've got nothing really in the sort of mids down, so we're losing it all. So really you probably want to design this that you actually go a little bit further before you lose that high end. So perhaps if the vitality had gone down, and remember you can apply this to many instruments. So let's go to, say, the percussion. Let's add yet another multi-band EQ. Let's do the same thing again. I don't know why we're on A again. Let's do E. So now we're doing exactly the same thing on the percussion track. Let's right click, add automation. Straight away you've got a multi-band pop up. Go to vitality. We can do exactly the same thing. So 100% we're happy. As we get down to 0, we lose everything here. So you're actually losing the music in this case. Oh, I picked up some health. So you can design this in any way you like to essentially demonstrate your idea of what it is you're trying to design. The world's kind of your oyster. You know, it might be that this horn stab you don't always hear, so we turn a probability on. You might hear that one 30% of the time. You might hear this low brass 30% of the time. You might hear the rumphs always. So when you play in this section now, so I hope that starts to make a little bit of sense. So just, I would play around. You need to get your loop regions solid. You need to then work on your transitions so that they go to the correct places. Don't forget about this destination here, because this is where you're saying I want you to go to, in this case gameplay, but only if the game state is set to gameplay. So you need to think about how all these are all labelled and how they work together. That example of the health, perhaps not the best in terms of an EQ sweep on individual stems, but I think it definitely works when you're in a menu capacity. So if we bring our health down, because we've got one linear stem, that sweep works really well. So say you're paused right now on low health, that's what you might hear. %78% health is there, and then we're full. We're full in terms of our EQ. So I hope that was useful. Please do leave me a comment if you want me to cover anything else. My final point might be around, let's say, I've just remembered this off the top of my head, so let's mention it. Say you're in the menu and you go to the gameplay. Now we've got this offset option, which we can say relative. So say we now go off to gameplay, and then we come back to menu, then we go back to gameplay. Notice it's not gone back to the start like it did with menu. It's returning to the point when you left. So if we do the same for menu, we say offset of relative. Excuse me. So we're looping back round. Let's go back to menu. Did not start on the beginning. So we're going to jump off just before 20 seconds to gameplay again. Let's go back to menu. So we're returning to a relative point that's not exactly back to the beginning. If we turn that off and we go none, and we turn the gameplay off and we go back to none, when you jump, say, to gameplay, you're going to go to the start. When you go to menu, you're going to go to the start. So that offset is quite an interesting point if that is part of your game design. You know, if you were in the middle of a battle, say, of course, let's just add one, because I keep transition to battle. Sorry, transition region to battle. Boom, boom. On the condition that there is a battle. So menu, off to battle. Lots of revision for you guys here. Boom, we're there. So it might be that if you suddenly pressed pause and went back to menu, say, maybe you want to actually return at exactly that point, in which case your relative place of leaving this particular queue is relevant. Back to battle, sorry, we need to set that to relative. So after gameplay, say, back to battle. We're a bit more where we left off. So that's my last point I'm going to leave with you guys. I hope that was useful and enjoyable. Do let me know, send you what you've written, what you're doing, and I will see you in the next video.